Hi, everyone. My name's Michael, and welcome to HR Insight. I work in human resources, and if you've ever had to deal with HR, you probably have some questions or some opinions. There's a lot of confusion I see around what HR actually does and what we can do, and how decisions really get made behind the scenes. So, in this video, I'm going to walk through some of the most common questions. Things like whether HR is there to protect you, if you can get fired without warning, and what actually gets people terminated. I'm going to give you the real answers, not the polished handbook version your HR is going to give you. Is HR there to protect me or the company? Short answer, the company. That's the honest answer. But that doesn't mean HR is against you. And I think that's where a lot of people get it twisted. HR's job is to protect the company by making sure things are handled the right way. That means following policy, staying compliant, and making sure decisions are consistent. So when something happens, whether it's a complaint, an investigation, a performance issue, HR is looking at what are the facts? What does the policy say? And how do we handle this without creating risk? Now, here's the part people don't always realize. If that's done correctly, it does protect employees too. Because you don't want a system where things are random or based on favoritism. But HR is not your personal advocate. It's not your lawyer. It's not your best friend at work. It's a function of the business. And once you understand that, a lot more of HR starts to make sense. Can I get fired without warning? Yes. In most cases, employment is at will, which means a company can end employment at any time for almost any reason, as long as it's not illegal. Now, should it be happening? No. In a well-run organization, it shouldn't feel like it came out of nowhere. You should see it coming. There should be expectations set, there should be feedback, and there should be some level of documentation along the way. That's what good management looks like. But here's the reality. Not every manager is great at that. Not every company is consistent with that. So sometimes it does feel sudden. And when that happens, usually one of two things went wrong. Either the employee wasn't picking up on the signals or the company didn't communicate clearly. But from a legal standpoint, yes, it can happen. And that is something people should understand going in. Are conversations with HR confidential? This one gets misunderstood all the time. HR is not the same as a doctor. It's not the same as a lawyer. There is no guaranteed confidentiality. If you bring something forward, especially something serious, HR may have an obligation to act on it. And acting on it usually means involving other people. That could be leadership, it could be legal, it could be other employees if there's an investigation. Now, a good HR team will limit that information sharing as much as possible. They're not going to go around sharing things just to share them, but they will share what's necessary to address the issue. So the better way to think about it is this. It's not fully confidential, but it should be handled professionally and with discretion. And if you're bringing something forward, just understand that it may not stay in that one conversation. Can I get fired for calling out sick too much? It depends, but yes, it can happen. What companies are looking at is consistency and impact. If someone is calling out occasionally, that's normal. Things happen, people get sick. But when it becomes a pattern, when it starts affecting scheduling, coverage, or overall performance, that's when it becomes an issue. Now, there are protections in place depending on the situation. If it qualifies under FMLA, that's protected. If there's a medical condition that falls under ADA, That's also protected. That's a different conversation altogether. But outside of those protections, attendance is still a job requirement. And if that's not being met consistently, it can and should lead to discipline. The biggest mistake people make out here is staying quiet about it. They just call out, and never explain what's going on. If something's legitimately happening, the earlier you communicate it, the more options there usually are. But once it shows up as a pattern on paper, it is a performance issue. What actually gets people fired? Most of the time, it's not one big moment. It's patterns. That's what people miss. It's not usually one mistake. It's repeated behavior over time. Attendance issues, consistently showing up late, not following direction, poor attitude, not meeting expectations. And sometimes it's smaller things that just stack and stack and stack up until it's a problem. Now, yeah, there are situations where someone gets fired immediately. Happens all the time. Serious policy violations, misconduct, things like that. But the majority of terminations, they build over time. And here's the part people don't realize is by the time it gets to a termination, the decision is usually pretty clear already internally. There's already been conversations. There's already been documentation, at least there should be. Even if it didn't feel serious in the moment. That's why I always say terminations shouldn't feel like a surprise. If they do, something broke down somewhere, either in communication or in accountability. But in most cases, there were signs. Do I have to tell HR everything? No, you're not required to volunteer information about your personal life or things that aren't relevant to your work situation. But here's where people get themselves into some trouble. When they're involved in something and they start leaving pieces out, or they try to shape the story a certain way. Because what happens is more information will come out later, and when it doesn't match what you originally said, it creates a credibility issue. HR should be paying attention to consistency. If your story changes or important details were left out, it becomes harder to trust anything else that you're going to say involving the issue after that. So, no, you don't need to overshare. But if you're part of a situation, you need to be honest about it. There's a difference between being private and being misleading. And once trust is gone in a workplace setting, just as in real life, it's really hard to rebuild it. There's a lot more I could get into, but I think this is a good starting point. If you ever had questions about HR and felt like you weren't getting a straight answer, that's exactly what I'm going to do here. And if you're on the other side trying to get this right as a leader, that's what I do every day. I'll keep putting this out, so if this was helpful, stick around.